From the outside, Emily's life looked completely fine. She was 38, lived in a quiet part of the city, had a stable relationship, a comfortable home, a routine that made sense. Nothing dramatic, nothing chaotic. If you asked her how she was, she would probably say, "I'm good." And she meant it. Or at least, she thought she did. Emily and James had been together for 8 years. They didn't fight much. There were no major problems. No betrayals. No obvious reasons to question the relationship. They had dinner together most evenings. Watched the same shows. Went to bed around the same time. Everything was steady. Predictable. Safe. But something had quietly changed. Not in a way you could point to. Not in a way that would make her leave. Just something subtle. It started with small things. Emily used to share everything with him. Her thoughts. Her ideas. Even the little things that didn't seem important. But over time, she noticed herself stopping. Not intentionally. Just, gradually. She would think something, and then decide not to say it. Not because she couldn't, but because it didn't feel necessary anymore. Conversations became shorter. More practical. Did you pay the bill? What time are you leaving tomorrow? They still spoke every day. But they didn't really connect anymore. James hadn't changed much. He was still kind. Still present. But emotionally, he wasn't really there. And Emily didn't know how to explain that. So she didn't. Instead, she adjusted. She became easier. Less demanding. More understanding. She stopped expecting deeper conversations. Stopped asking questions that might lead somewhere uncomfortable. And slowly, she became quieter. Not just in what she said, but in who she was. There was a version of Emily who used to feel more alive. More expressive. More present in her own life. And now, that version felt distant. One evening, they were sitting on the sofa. The TV was on. James was scrolling on his phone. And Emily was there, right next to him. But she felt completely alone. And that was the moment something clicked. Not dramatically. Not painfully. Just, clearly. She realized, I don't feel like myself anymore. And the confusing part was, nothing was technically wrong. There was no big problem to solve. No obvious reason to leave. Which made it harder. Because how do you explain something that doesn't look like a problem, but feels like one? And this is where many women stay. Not because they are happy, but because nothing is bad enough to justify change. Over time, Emily had adapted to the relationship. But in doing that, she had also moved away from herself. This happens more often than people realize. When emotional connection slowly fades, the mind tries to protect the relationship. It avoids tension, avoids conflict, avoids disruption. And in that process, you start adjusting your behavior, your expression, your needs. You don't speak as much. You don't ask as much. You don't feel as much. Not because you don't care, but because it feels easier not to go there. And little by little, you stop showing up fully as yourself. The relationship continues. The life continues. Everything looks fine from the outside. But inside, there's a quiet disconnection. Not just from the other person, but from yourself. And that's the part that often goes unnoticed. Because it doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't demand attention. It just sits there, in the background. Until one day, you realize you've been living like this for a while. Functioning, showing up, doing everything right, but not really feeling present in your own life. And maybe this resonates with you. Not because something is clearly wrong, but because something feels slightly off. Hard to explain, easy to ignore, but still there. And if you've ever felt like this, you're not alone. Sometimes it's not about something breaking. It's about something slowly fading. And when that happens, it's worth paying attention. Not to the relationship first, but to yourself. Because the moment you start feeling less like yourself, that's not something to dismiss. It's something to understand. And understanding this doesn't start with big decisions. It doesn't start with leaving the relationship or changing everything overnight. It starts in a much quieter way, and a much more honest one. It begins with small questions, the kind you may have been avoiding for a long time. Like, when do I stop being myself? When was the last time I felt truly connected to me? What have I stopped expressing without even noticing? Because often, it's not that you've completely lost yourself. It's that you've been adjusting for so long that parts of you have gone quiet. And reconnecting with that doesn't require immediate confrontation. It requires awareness. Paying attention to small things. What you feel, but don't say. What you think, but dismiss. What you need, but no longer consider. And maybe, for now, it's not about changing the relationship, but about reconnecting with yourself within it. About slowly taking back your emotional space. Without pressure. Without needing to explain everything right away. Because sometimes, the most important shift doesn't begin with the other person. It begins the moment you start listening to yourself again. And from there, things become clearer. Conversations become more honest. And what once felt confusing starts to make sense. And if this speaks to you, let me know. You can share in the comments what you've been feeling or what you're going through right now. I read them, and I use them to create videos that actually help you understand what's happening beneath the surface. And if you want more content like this, you can follow the channel. I share stories like this regularly, real situations, real patterns, and the emotional dynamics behind them. Sometimes, understanding what you feel is the first step to changing it.